Hey, what's up guys? In this video tutorial, we're gonna be testing Kiro IDE from Amazon, and we're gonna be building an e-learning platform with it. Let's start by creating a nice prompt with ChatGPT, even though we can create it directly in Kiro. So let's take a look at the website and let's get to know what Kiro is. So if you go to Kiro.dev, you can download the IDE. It's like a clone of Visual Studio Code, so it's the same interface, but with Kiro features embedded into it. So the first thing that you have to do is just to click on download and install, and it's very easy. There is a version for Windows, for Mac is Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code. Wherever you can install Visual Studio Code, you can install also Kiro. So what I like about Kiro is that you can build your project based on specs, based on user stories and acceptance criteria. And that's very nice. You don't have to know about user stories or acceptance criteria. You just can give a prompt and it's going to generate all of the user stories and acceptance criteria for you. So go to downloads, choose your operating system and install your IDE. So you have to have something like this. So this is the icon. When you log in, you can see there is the same interface that we have with Visual Studio Code. Of course, the look and feel changes a little bit, but you have here your debug and run, you have your extension, and when you install it, and if you already have Visual Studio Code, it asks you to import, for example, the extension from Visual Studio Code. So this is what you have at the beginning. For example, I already installed the SQL tools in order to have access to the database. And here you can either begin by vibe coding, you just give a prompt of what you want, or you can plan first and then build, and that's what we're gonna be testing. So we're gonna do everything in a practical way so that you get to know how to use it right away. So when you install it and you click here at the bottom left icon of your account, you can see that the first month you're gonna have 500 credits in total, and take into consideration that a prompt can be 1 credit. It depends on what model you use. If you use Sonnet, we're going to take a look at that. And then you have 50 credits for free every month. So you can see here that I consumed already 25 with the project that I was working in. So let's give it a try. What I did, but we can do everything inside here, is just to go to ChatGPT or whatever LLM you're using. In my case, I'm using ChatGPT, and I gave ChatGPT this role. I always give a role, even though with ChatGPT 5, it automatically detects the role that you want according to your request. So the role is you're a software architect specialized in scalable web applications. You always use state-of-the-art technology for enterprise business applications. You always apply cutting-edge patterns such as solid, principles, dry, case, etc. So this is the response, and here is the prompt that I use. I like to build a web app where I can sell my online courses, video tutorials, and mentorings. So here you describe what you want. Put in as much information as you want. I did this for ChatGPT. You can see that users can register and buy courses or subscriptions. These are like user stories, what I'm giving here to ChatGPT. Teachers can collaborate and create a course together. That's another user story. Courses belong to different categories. Courses have sections and sections have many lessons. So some acceptance criteria that I'm giving. But you don't have to know about that. You just give as much description as you want. In the case of ChatGPT, of course, it gave me everything related to architecture. So you can either use this prompt directly into Kiro, or maybe you give this architecture if you want to refine your prompt first here. But let's give it a try by just copying and pasting this prompt. So let's open Kiro and let's click on spec, and you leave here autopilot. With autopilot, it's gonna choose the best model according to the prompt. If you click on auto, you can see that you can choose Cloud Sonnet. For example, if you're coding and you wanna make something very complicated, then you can use Cloud Sonnet. The 4.5, it is less than that, Cloud Sonnet 4, or you can just choose auto. With auto, you spend more or less 1 credit per prompt, and with Cloud Sonnet, you see that you can spend 1.3 max. Okay, so let's just click on spec, and then we paste the prompt here, and let's press enter. And here you see to the right, you're gonna see a window, and you can see that right away it's gonna create the requirements. So it's gonna create here on the left panel, you can see that it created a .kiro folder inside specs, because we chose to go with the specs, and then the name of the project. Okay, and you can see here that we have the requirements .mid. So let's take a look at what it created. We can click here on the top right corner icon to preview the requirements file, and you can see an online course platform that enables teachers to create and sell video tutorials, coding exercises, and educational content to students. The platform supports multiple user roles, students, teachers, super admin. Okay, so this would be the requirements that you should create, but with a prompt, it creates the requirements for you. So glossary, you can see platform, the online course platform for web applications. Student, a registered user. Teacher, a registered user who can create courses. Super admin, an administrative user with full platform management. And here you can see the requirements. User story, okay, this is user story number 1. As a visitor, I want to register as either student or teacher so that I can access platform features appropriate to my role. And then it creates also the acceptance criteria, the things that we can test. When a visitor accesses the registration page, the platform shall display options to register as student or teacher. When a visitor submits valid registration information, the platform shall create a user account with the selected role. And so you can see all of the requirements here. The user story, as a student, I want to browse and search for courses. As a student, I want to purchase courses or subscription. As a student, I want to watch course content and access attachments so that I can learn from educational materials. As a teacher, I want to create and organize courses with sections and lessons so that I can structure my educational content effectively. And then you have all of the acceptance criteria. When a teacher creates a course, the platform shall allow input of course title, description, category. Okay, you can see all of the acceptance criteria here. Now, if you agree, you can refine, you can add some other user stories or some acceptance criteria to some of the requirements. But let's suppose that everything goes well and that we finished with the requirement. Now we click on move to the design phase. Now it's gonna design our system. And it's going to create also a file here with the design of our software. It's working on it. You can click on the arrow and you can see that it's working on the requirements. Let's wait some seconds. All right, and now we have the graph here for the design. You can see the tab here for the requirements file, design file. And if we click on the top right corner of the tab, we see this eye icon here, and you can see the design. Okay, this is the format. And if we take a look, you can see here the front-end layer, a React single page application. Then we have the analytics service, the user management service, the Postgres SQL as database, Then here we have the data layer. So we have PostgreSQL database, we have Redis cache, we have file storage, okay, because we're gonna be uploading attachments to lessons. So it decided to use S3 storage and CloudFront. Then for buying the courses, we need a payment service. So we need a payment gateway. In this case, it chose Stripe. Then we need an email service, okay, to send invoices and notifications. And then it chose SendGrid. And then a video CDN also, because we're going to be uploading our videos to a CDN. So at the top level, at the front-end layer, we're going to have a React single page application. Then the video player component, the course management UI in the back office, and the admin dashboard for the super admin to manage the whole platform. So as backend services, you can see analytics service, so to see all of the statistics related to courses, user management system, so that we can manage all of our users, teachers, the course management part, authentication service, file storage service, and payment services, okay? So it proposes this technology stack. Front end, React 18, so we can ask to use the latest React version, or we can change the front end. Say, okay, I don't feel comfortable programming with React, I use Angular. We can ask now to change it. So as a backend, Node.js with Express.js, TypeScript for type safety, JWT for authentication, JSON Web Token, Muter for file uploads, Socket.io for real time. Infrastructure, AWS S3 for file storage, but of course in local we're gonna be using something different. And then you can see here some example of the entities, the user, all of the interfaces, user entity, course entity, section, lessons, lesson contents, enrollment, and then the API interface, course management. So we can refine everything here. Now it asks to move to the implementation part, but I'm gonna change something here. For example, let's use Next.js for the front end and NestJS for the backend. Then I'm gonna ask to create also a Docker compose file because I wanna use Docker. Create a Docker compose file to manage all of the services. We can also ask to use Tailwind CSS. And what else? So we have Next.js with Tailwind. We have Nest, okay, with S.js for the backend. So we use TypeScript both in the front end and in the backend. For the database, it's okay to use Postgres. So let's send this new prompt and let's see how it changes the design. So now you can see here that it's gonna use Next 14, but I think we have the latest version that is 15. Let me just verify, but of course, if it creates with the npm command, it's gonna get the latest version. So the latest version is 15.4. And then if we use NestJS, is 11.1. But when it scaffolds the whole system, it's gonna get the latest version, but it's better just to emphasize that to use the latest version. Please use the latest Next.js and Nest.js versions. Also, you can notice here on the chat the amount of credits that you spent for every chat that you sent. Let me see if I see it here. There was somewhere where the chat we could see the credits. Let me just increment the size of the chat. So next 15, and it says Nest version 10. So for releases we have version 11.1. So let's clarify that. I think we're not consuming any credits yet, okay, because we're not implementing the code. So let's specify NestJS version 11. So you can see here in the chat that we can add images. For example, if we have some design, some sketches for our front end, then we can also upload images for the interface. Okay, so we have here next 15, we have the backend nests with TypeScript, passport, JSON web token, muter, socket IO, class validator, type ORM for database operations. In the previous project that I developed, it used Prisma. Database Postgres for primary database storage, Redis, okay. Structure Docker Compose for local development orchestration, Minio for local S3 compatible file storage, AWS 3 for production file storage, Stripe for payment processing, okay, and then we can see the rest of the requirement here. So you can see some of the tables that it designed, user with ID, email, password, first name, last name, email, etc. Maybe we can ask to also add favorite courses to manage favorite courses. For example, let's add also this, manage favorite courses and certificate of completion add, for example, a dashboard for the course where with a Q&A session, add a Q&A section for every course. Okay, let's see if we take a look at the design. It's still working on the latest requirements, okay? So you can see that it's changing the accepted edits to the design. And you can see here that favorite courses management. Students can add, remove courses to and from favorites, dedicated favorites table and API endpoints, easy access to favorite courses from student dashboard, certificate of completion, automatic certificate generation when course is completed, unique certificate numbers, okay. Q&A section for courses. Students can ask questions about courses or specific lesson, great. Teachers and other students can answer questions, great. Voting system for question and answer, upvote, downvote, great. Accepted answers feature for best responses, pinned questions, great. That's what I wanted. We could also specify that we would like to have a Q&A like, for example, Udemy platform or Teachable. But that's great. So now let's click on Move to Implementation Plan. We click on that icon, and then it's going to create a task list for us with every phase of the implementation. So you can see that it says, I've created a comprehensive implementation plan that breaks down your online course platform into 20 manageable tasks. So we're going to have 20 tasks for our platform. The plan follows an incremental development approach where each task builds upon the previous ones. Okay, key implementation strategy. Task 1 to 4, foundation. So we're going to be creating Docker setup, database, authentication, authorization, from 5 to 7 core course management, courses, sections, lessons, file handling. From 8 to 10, student experience, browsing, purchasing, and course viewing. Task 11 to 12, enhanced features, Q&A, favorites, certificates, okay, so that we can have at least a minimum viable product without going into all the tasks. And then advanced features like real-time, mobile security. 18 to 19, testing and monitoring, okay, that is marked as optional. Task 20, production deployment. So optional tasks are marked with an asterisk. So each task includes specific requirements, references, and builds incrementally towards a complete form. So if you click here, for example, this is task number 1, you click start task and it starts working. What I would like to ask is for Kiro that every time a task is implemented or a feature, that it commits the file for me, okay? Because maybe the repository is not gonna be initialized with Git if you don't ask it to. And also, I would like to create a file with the task progress, with the plan progress. So this is the whole plan. I'm gonna ask that every time that it finishes a task, it's gonna create a plan progress with the tasks that have been implemented. In that way, if you use any other AI, then you can ask that AI to follow the tasks and to take a look in that progress file to see what was the last task or what task was that implemented the last. So let's ask this to finalize. Please always stage and commit whenever you finish a feature. Create a plan or let's call it a task progress MD file where you're going to log every task and its steps that were implemented. So you can see here that it updates the task file. If you click, you can see here and you can view the diff, okay? What was added: create task progress file for tracking implementation progress, stage and commit initial project setup. No, not the initial project setups. Okay, let's wait because I asked to always commit when a new feature was finished. So now the current task list marks some tasks as optional, unit test, documentation. So we can click on keep optional tasks, okay, for faster MVP, or make all tasks required for comprehensive from start. So we're gonna keep optional tasks so that we're gonna develop faster, but then we can click on the start task to implement also the optional tasks. Okay, great. You can see now that we have here credits used 3.32, elapsed time 22 minutes. So every 5 minutes it updates the credits that were used during the prompting. So we used 3.5 credits for that. And you can see here spec creation complete. Your online course platform spec is ready with requirement document, design document, implementation plan. Key features included multi-role system, course creation with section, teacher collaboration, Q&A, favorites, payment, comprehensive admin controls, mobile response design. Great. Now we can click on the tasks. Here we open the task and click on the first task, start task. So set up project structure, Docker environment, the Docker Compose file, initialize Next, initialize Nest, and configure the environment. So let's give it a try and let's click on start task. So of course, these tasks are going to take longer because all the code has to be generated. It's going to write code on the console. Then we have to approve some of the commands that are going to be executed so that it doesn't ask us every time if we authorize that command. So in this case, npx, it didn't ask me to authorize that because I already authorized those commands, npm, npx, git. If you go to the settings, then you can also set all of the commands that you want to authorize or remove some of the commands that you have already authorized. So you can see here that is creating the next app latest. So as I told you, it would have taken the latest version anyway, with TypeScript, with Tailwind, with ESLint, app, srcdir, import alias with @ etc. So let's say yes to proceed. And then it's asking us to if we want to use TurboPack. So with TurboPack, you have a monorepo so that we can share some of the configuration between the front end and the back end, because both Nest and Next uses npm packages. So we can say yes or no. Let's say yes so that you can see how it works. And now you're going to see all of the packages that are going to be installed: React, React DOM, Next, TypeScript. So hang on, it's going to take a while. Okay, it created the front end part. Let me close some files so that we can see the code that it's being generated. So you can see here that we already have the front end part, and now it's creating the Docker Compose file. And now it's executing the NestJS installation. So Next.js CLI latest with the name backend, with package manager npm, skip git, etc. Let's say yes. And so you can take a look here at the Docker Compose file. The version tag isn't necessary, but we have the services here, the front end, and it's going to create a Docker file for that. And then it's going to expose port 3000 so that we can access from our browser. And then you can see here that is settings the public URL for the public API. In reality, it should have used the internal name here, that is backend. Let's see if it works like that, but I think it should have set here localhost, but we can override those variables with a m file. So if you open the m file, you can see here some of the data that it's already adding to the environment. So you can see for the backend that we have the node-env, we have the database URL. For the database, is using the Postgres name here that you can see down below with Postgres 15 Alpine, and we pass here the environment variables, the name of the DB, name of the user, and name of the password. We can change this one before executing Docker Compose up. Then we have for Redis, Minio, and the volumes. Okay, so it should work. And you can see that it creates also it created the task progress So that's why I wanted to have this file here, because we can ask any other AI, I don't know, Cursor or Codex, to take a look at this file and verify what tasks have been done and what steps inside the task. So you can see service configure, front end, backend, Postgres. So you have all the log here with all the instruction. For example, Docker compose up -- build. So it's waiting for me to authorize this command, removing Git from the front end, because it's gonna initialize the whole repo for us. I'm gonna say trust the command, and I'm gonna trust the base. I mean, remove is it's a little bit dangerous, so I'm not gonna authorize the base. I'm gonna just run it. You can see that we can open the settings and change what commands are authorized. You can see here npm and npnx git change mode node. All right, so you see that it's creating all of the git ignore files with the git initialization. So now it's verifying that the Docker compose file is okay. I'm gonna run that command. So you can see that the version attribute is deprecated. And let's take a look. Now it's gonna run Docker compose up -- build to build the image. And let's see, because I don't see here the Docker file anywhere. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is just to stop some of the projects that I have already running here, because they might conflict with this one. And then I'm gonna execute here. You see Docker compose build. We can copy this command or run on the terminal. Okay, let's see if the Docker compose file works. All right, the Docker file is inside the front end folders. So if we take a look at the front end, we see the Docker file inside. So it's gonna use a Node 18 Alpine. We can change that image for the 20 or the 22 if we want to. Okay, I'm gonna change it later on to the latest version, because I wanna take advantage of the latest version. And if we take a look at the backend, it's using also the Alpine 18. So it seems that it's working. You can see the output here. Let's take a look at the orb stack. I'm using orb stack instead of Docker desktop. You can see that the backend is running. If we click on logs, you can see that it's waiting for connection. So if we visit localhost 3000 or 4000 for Next.js, let's see. Okay, on 3000 we have Next and it's working. Let's see what port we defined for 4000. Let's take a look to see why it's not working. Let me see if we have any other port using that port. So we have from the logs here, or we can just go to extension and install Docker so that we can have access to the Docker containers from within the editor. We can go to backend, open in the browser. Okay, we have the Docker extension here. We can open the backend part here and click on view logs. And so next application fully started. Let's see why it's not working on the browser. Ports, okay, we don't have any forward port. Let's forward, I don't know why. Let's take a look at the Docker compose file, maybe because the port was used. The port is forwarded here, 4000. We can ask Kiro verify the Docker Compose file. Nest application is not available on localhost 4000. So you can see some of the secrets here. Let's see, I'll verify Docker Compose setup. Okay, because NestJS works by default on port 3000, and then it was forwarding the 4000 that it wasn't exposed. So now it for sure exposed the 4000. Let's open the Docker file here. Okay, you can see here now the 4000 is exposed, and you can see if I open the web page now, let's reload the page, and great, the application is working. Now let's work on the next task, and let's verify if it committed the modifications. It didn't, so let me trust this command, the Docker Compose command. You can see that it created a test command just to verify if the front end was working. You can see it here. Okay, now it's committing the modifications, and it's updating our task progress. You can see that it removed the test command before committing. That was really great. So let's open the task progress. You can see here it created the Docker Compose, initialized Next.js, configured environment variables, task progress, etc. Of course, we can modify all of the secrets here that you will pass into the configuration. We could also read those secrets from the environment variable here in .env. We can ask, please pass env variables to Docker Compose from .env. So now it's gonna update Docker Compose to use environment variables, and then we can use the .env file here, you can see here, to modify whatever we want inside the Docker Compose. Okay, now you can see that we're using environment variables here. Okay, I'm gonna accept that modification. And then it's creating also a .env.sample just to let our users know what variables they should use. Of course, because we're not committing the .env file, but we're committing the example file. So don't share any important secret here in your example file. So you use the .env file for your example. You can change here, for example, your JSON Web Token secrets with whatever string you want. The secret for the refresh. And you can change here, for example, progress DB, the progress, the password, for example, you can change it. And I'm gonna use just idran123. And of course, if you modify this one, you have to execute Docker Compose down and then Docker Compose up. Okay, great. Don't forget to always commit the modifications. I committed the test backend, but it's okay. We can have it there just to execute it if we want to test if the backend is up and running. We have the progress file updated. Let's take a look at it. Okay, now let's run the next task. We open task.md. You can see here that we have the tick, set up the project structure, create the Docker Compose file, etc. Let's run implement database schema, core entities, and everything else. So now you can see here in the backend that is creating the configuration for the database with the type ORM module, and it takes the configuration from the environment variables. It sets up the entities, the migration files, the synchronization only to make the synchronization of the migrations into the database automatically only in development environments. So you see that we have the module config service to read data from the configuration service, and it gets the data from the .m file or environment variables in general. So here we have a folder for the entities. We have attachment, categories, course collaborators, course entity. You can see it defines different parts of the course entities. Here's the class, and then we have decorators to indicate which field is the primary key, what type of column we have. For example, string with the length. This type of column that is text, string is by default. Short description, decimal. You can see all of these decorators that we use from type ORM. All right, I'm gonna pause the video and let's take a look at the code once it's finished.